Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On Point EDC. We have a really cool knife for you today from RealSteel, the second RealSteel knife that's made it onto the channel. I was so impressed with the Megalodon I reviewed before it that really wanted to keep an eye out in kind of that S series line, and here we have one of their newest offerings. But before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit about RealSteel as a brand. Now, they were founded in 2013, very new, and they are of course made in China. Their market segment is that really high value knives, all the way to kind of entry level to high end. So really bringing the value across kind of all the lines that they carry. They do have some really great, this piece for a while, and it's still out, it's still released, not like it's discontinued. There's actually a cheaper model with lower grade steel and aluminum handles that's out there. This is the Griffin. This particular model is the updated one. It's the Griffin 2017 Titan. So really, in that titanium line, and really nice. But before we get into too much about this particular knife, let's go ahead and do the customary wristwatch check. Today, during this review, what you'll see flopping around on my wrist is the Christopher Ward Trident Pro C60 titanium. So I felt like this was a pretty appropriate watch to wear for this review. One, of course, because it's titanium, and two, it really is one of those ones where newer up and coming brand just offers a ton of value and fantastic execution. And basically the brand isn't building itself up by tons of marketing and ads. Really, they build their brand through just quality and those really grassroots user reviews. So big ups to Christopher Ward, being trailblazers in kind of that boutique and micro brand space as far as the watch scene goes. Let me make sure everything's focused there. As you can see, very svelte and tactical look to this guy here. Really nice, fantastic rubber strap, really beautiful, and I think it suits the aesthetic for this review quite nice. Now, this is the RealSteel Griffin 2017 Titan. It is an EDC folding knife, so when you're looking for something, it really has that kind of utility knife. You want something that has a pocketable size and some versatile blade geometry, and I think that's definitely what we have here. So, this guy is really like the Megalodon, is something that is just in their kind of higher end range. This is a Halo model. This is something where this was RealSteel showing what they're capable of, and I have to say again, very impressed with the statement they made. Now, this is actually a premium refresh of a popular budget model, and the budget model was based on actually on another model that was made by let me see, who was it there? It was actually a Carson Tech Knives. So similar story to the Megalodon again, in that it's kind of a production version of a pretty successful more custom knife or mid-tech level knife. So I gotta say, and as you can see, I've misfired a couple times. This isn't gonna be quite as usable as the Spidey hole, but one of the things that this has over many Spidey holes is one, the look is much nicer, but also these edges are all broken. They're not sharp at all. They definitely took the extra time, and I'm not gonna ever worry about getting, even though this is a smaller pocket and it could grab your finger a lot easier, it's never gonna cut me, because RealSteel definitely didn't leave that as kind of an unfinished sharp area. So the retail price for these is roughly $260, and the street price you can find them for is about $210 if you can find them in the States anyway. I actually got this from a UK vendor. So, you know, after VAT and whatnot was removed, it actually made it kind of right there at that 210 sweet spot. So a little bit about these specs. Now the blade is made out of Bowler, which is an Austrian company, M390, which is ultra premium. Love this steel, M390. Really, you know, kind of, if I could sum up M390, it's just really well balanced. And you know, let's say if it had a report card, it would have fives, you know, if it's 1 out of 5. You know, there's a lot of other steels that are going to kind of have a little variance. You know, it's really good for edge retention, but really hard to sharpen. You know, or it's hard, but it's brittle. So M390 to me is just kind of a sweet spot in that it's really just across the board. It just is great at everything. It's you know, very corrosion resistant, but it's also very strong and very sharp without and it can hold an edge, but it can also take an edge. You can actually sharpen it. It's not so hard where you only have to worry about that initial edge, and then putting on the next one is going to be just a nightmare. So I think that's one of the cool things about M390 stainless steel. It has a drop point blade. This is a full flat grind with this really nice kind of satin finish there. It's very sharp out of box. The handle is a bead blasted titanium with some very nice carbon fiber inserts there. You saw the stats in the beginning there, but this is about overall length just over 8 inches, blade length just slightly over 3.5, and then the close length right a little over 4.5. And then the weight on this surprisingly only comes in at 4.2. And this is, you know, there's a lot of meat to this knife. This is not by any means a small knife. So the fact that it only weighs 4.2 ounces is really surprising. And I know that might not sound super lightweight to anybody, but considering how much blade and how much handle you get, I think that's just an outstanding weight. So let's go ahead and let's just do a couple of size comparisons just to kind of give you an idea of, you know, kind of where this piece lands. Now, I'd say a very close comparison would be the Paramilitary 2. This is also an M390 model. This is one that, you know, I kind of pimped out there with the titanium scale and the blued titanium hardware, milled pocket clip, carbon fiber scale, kind of trying to keep it somewhat light, but really kind of dress it up. So it's funny because these are very similar in that the titanium, carbon fiber, you know, compression lock and the button lock are actually very similar. Both M390, both have the little flip hole there. Except, you know, on the Spyderco, it is, I mean, this isn't as sharp as, you know, a Tai Chung factory flipper hole, but, you know, it definitely feels, actually, this one isn't too shabby. I think they did a pretty good job on this particular one, but normally those Spidey holes can be a little bit sharp. So very similar system here. Basically, the compression lock versus the button lock. Ooh. Almost got me there. Now, the cool thing about these is, you know, instead of being a frame lock where or a liner lock where your finger has to be in the way for you to close the knife, here you just basically let go and then bam. So, you know, instead of pushing a button in here, this is just manually pushing it out there and then allowing the blade to fall. So, but size-wise, definitely very similar profile. But price-wise, I mean, this guy without all the fancy upgrades was already pretty close in price to here. But, you know, as you can see, very, very close in size. Now, another comparison I'd like to make, very close comparison, I'd say, as far as style and kind of that feel and aesthetic, would be my Benchmade 765. Now, of course, it's, you know, shorter in length, but there is the 761, which is, you know, the larger version. But to me, just kind of the way the contours and the handle and kind of that, you know, futuristic kind of look, you know, the waves, but also still, you know, nice straight lines. And then even that blade profile is really quite similar. So, and then of course it's not a flipper, it's a non-flipper, although it's a frame lock. It definitely has this guy. This reminds me a lot of a Sebenza in that it's very simple, but its execution is so excellent that you almost can't really put your finger on it. You just know that this is a very special piece, and this is a lot more expensive than this guy here, and it's giving you, you know, a good amount more blade there. I mean, even I guess if we go past the choil, it's not a huge difference as far as, you know, I guess the actual edge goes, but, you know, more handle, you know, a little fancier deployment system, and I think a much more usable pocket clip. So something to think about there. And as far as quality goes, you know, very similar. Now another one is, you know, of course the axis lock, another, you know, kind of non-flipper way to do it. Very similar as well. And of course this is also much smaller, but it's also M390. All the blades we've looked at so far, all M390. Try to keep the comparisons to M390 blades. But yeah, this one, you know, again, you're spending the money for the Doug Ritter mini grip, and then you're adding the scales, you know, and then you're adding a pocket clip, and you know, it's going to be more expensive, although it's a nice piece of kind of man candy to have in your pocket. So is this guy. And I mean, it's coming from the factory like that versus this, you know, it definitely feels very special. And it is, you know, mainly because you can't buy it out of the box like this. You know, you have to kind of do a little bit of research. This is kind of a knife of a connoisseur to carry, because you know that for them to have this, they did their homework. But you know, again, like this is way heavier, I'd say, and feel, I mean, it's probably, I mean, they could probably weigh the same, but because this is so much more compact, you would expect it visually, you know, when you get it in hand, you would imagine that it would be a lot lighter, but it's definitely not. So the last comparison, just size-wise, I wanted to give you now was with another RealSteel, and you can see that it's just a little bit shorter. You know, and then it handle-wise very close, but it has a lot of those same similar features where it's, you know, nice and flat here where your thumb would want to rest, but then, you know, as the contours come around, you know, it's just so beautifully crafted, you know, and there's nowhere for it to bite you. You know, as you can see, it's not just a beveled edge that kind of goes around, you know, through a router, you know, kind of by the numbers. You know, there's just a lot of nice angles and thoughtful, you know, the way the light hits these angles is really, really nice, you know, and very similar to that flowing nature. And, you know, the Megalodon to me is just probably feels like one of the highest quality knives, you know, out there. And this guy isn't too far off. You know, I admire the fact that they went out there and put this together with a button lock. You know, that's really nice feature to have. Then of course the aesthetic is just, I mean, this thing is a looker. This has just got legs. You know, the carbon fiber inserts there, the nice shapes, everything ties together, even with, although they did reuse the same pocket clip, you know, I think it still has that similar design language, which is really, really nice. So in hand, you know, the ergonomics are really nice. It fills the hand, and as you can see earlier, there's a little wheel there basically, which is how you enable the lock, because, you know, of course it might upset someone. They might be scared to hold a button lock knife, and then let's say something's going on, they're doing some heavy cutting or getting a knife fight or something. They don't want to press this button and then have this thing come slamming down on their hand while it's closed. So this lock here stops that from happening. So that blade is going nowhere, you know. So really nice feature. You know, it's a very unobtrusive lock. It's just there. It's there where you need it, but it's not there when you don't need it. You know, it's not in your face or, you know, or anything. It's not an eyesore or anything like that. If anything, it kind of looks cool in there like that, like a little gear. So the ergonomics are really nice in the hand, fills the hand really nicely. The action is very smooth. You know, of course, it's gonna not be, I probably should add more wrist to it, but my elbow's on the table. I don't want to shake the camera up by adding too much kind of wrist flick to it. Let me lift my elbow up there and you can see it's gonna fire fine. On the video, of course, I'm kind of in weird angles. I'm not gonna hold a knife up and flip it out. Most of the time I'm probably gonna be holding it down and flipping it out. So that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind as you see. But you don't necessarily have to flip. You could also just depress the lock, let go, and then it's there, right? It's gonna hold, it's locked in there. You can put the lock on if you need to. So now this guy is gonna close very smooth, as you can see. I don't have to, you know, do anything to it. It's gonna just fall shut. And it does have those really nice needle bearing, you know, pivot system, which is great, ultra smooth, but also really buttoned down feeling. It doesn't just feel like it's a bunch of greased up, you know, ceramic ball bearings. It feels almost just like some really refined washers, in that it has that I guess that just consistency to the way that the blade kind of moves. Everything feels buttoned down. Doesn't feel like there's any space or any give. It doesn't feel like it moves because it's loose. It feels like it moves because it's just it's tuned in. It's just a dialed in detent, and you know, well, I shouldn't say detent, but just the pressure that's actually on this at all times that's holding it in there. It's just really dialed in super nicely. So, you know, it works really well with the button just to flip it out, you know, or to get it there with a thumb hole. So really nice. In pocket, it lays very flat, you know, and then, you know, one of the things I always kind of consider is when it's in the pocket, how does my hand navigate past it to grab something else in there? And because of this nice shape here, really easy. You know, if I wanted to, I could always put a lanyard on there too, because there's not really a lanyard tube on here. I actually prefer when they have a standoff like this to throw a lanyard on it anyway. So I think that's really a nice touch. I don't think this necessarily visually is going to be something where I really I may or may not want a lanyard. We'll see. I do enjoy throwing lanyards on knives that don't come with them, but yeah, this thing feels really nice. Now, as far as model variants, you know, there's an aluminum handle version that has that Sandvik 14C 28N blade, which, I mean, that thing is like $60 on Amazon. That's insane, because it's basically the same knife with just cheaper materials. But as far as, you know, the system and everything, it still has the button lock with the locking system, you know, and all kind of all the goodies. You know, it's just in a lower quality material. So I think that's really a great option, you know, even more of a value than this guy. I mean, this thing, you know, you put this in someone's hand and they don't know a lot about knives, they're gonna think this is one of the most fancy, expensive knives there are. And then let's say you put it in the hands of somebody who knows a lot about knives, they're gonna really be able to appreciate the build quality. Now, they might be a little thrown by, you know, the country of origin and kind of that side of it, but other than that, I mean, there's really no denying that this is a really amazing piece. You know, and then again, comparables, I'd say really close comparable would be the PM2. Size and kind of use case, I mean, really, it's just a much sexier PM2 versus the PM2 being a lot more utilitarian and kind of having that signature look. But I mean, as far as, you know, every other measurable difference, they're just very close. You know, even look at that blade from the top here, you know, the handles, the kind of the width, everything very comparable. It's funny how similar these could be, but also how different visually, you know, they feel, but how similar they kind of feel in hand, which is pretty nuts. Really, bottom line on this guy right here is, let me take a couple of those little greasy fingerprints off there. We can close this on a cleaner shot. The bottom line on this guy is that, you know, it's an ultra premium flagship model. you know, from a real up-and-comer in RealSteel. And to me, this guy takes top marks in execution and also design. So really well done, RealSteel. If you guys like the video, make sure to hit like. If you would like to subscribe and haven't, make sure to do that too. And let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below. I'd love to hear about, you know, if you have any experience with RealSteel, maybe you have the other Griffin and you had some thoughts on this guy. Or maybe you were wondering if this thing was worth the purchase and, you know, now you wanted to kind of see a full review on it. I don't think there's been too many reviews on this guy. So hopefully you found this helpful. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.